about because one of my great friends, one of Guyana's great men, greatest poets. All of you will know his work, I hope. In fact, I'm sure. Martin Carter. For this workshop, I wrote down some thoughts about Martin, what I call Martin's mantras. And I think there are things here that I'll read it to you because I think there are lots of insights. Yeah.
Sorry, sir.
There are lots of insights here that will, I hope, lead to food for thought about the whole process, the idea, what we do when we create it. Martin Carter spoke about poetry with serious intensity. His observations on the art and craft of poetry and on individual poets and poems were entangled in his ordinary conversation. Poetry was daily life. He scribbled lines on whatever was near to hand, scraps of paper, the flaps of cigarette packets, the backs of discarded envelopes. His thoughts were filled with poetry. Once I remember, I lent him the first volume of a biography of Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and some weeks later he returned the book with an apology for marking up the margins with comments. I replied that the book, for that very reason, had become one of the most precious in my library. Let me select 3 of Martin's mantras, which over the years we discussed, had conversations, and I remember. First, Martin is often asked to explain his poems. What does a poem mean? What did you intend when you wrote those lines? Martin often replied with a counter-question. What do you think the poem means? When he took more time, he would explain that when he allowed the publication of a poem, he gave up sole ownership. The reader became an owner also. It was as if the poem had entered the mind of the reader and there generated new significance, new symbols, and new intentions, and what the poem meant to the reader contained as much truth as that which the poet intended to convey. Good readers create the best poems. That, to me, was one of the important things that Martin said, and I often heard him talking with people along these lines. Secondly, Martin often said he never felt any poem he wrote was finished, and I really understand what he means by that. I'm interested to know if you have that experience also. Martin often said he never felt any poem he wrote was finished. It could be made better with a little more work, a little more thought, a further reach of the imagination, a sudden new stroke of inspiration. He never finished his poems. He released them for others to have a look. And I understand that. I always feel nervous after completing a poem, wondering whether it is really done to perfection, thinking that with a little further application, a nearer approximation to the ideal might be achieved. Martin even hinted to me once or twice that his poems, when released, might be improved by the suggestions of others, though I am not aware that this ever actually happened. But it is not out of the question. After all, the original version of what is considered the most influential poem in the 20th century, T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land, was chopped and changed drastically by T.S. Eliot's friend Ezra Pound, before Eliot published the famous poem. Of course, this begs the question, can a poem be a collaborative effort? And I wondered if you ever discussed it. I find it an interesting subject. Thirdly, and there were many more of these, but I've limited to 3 because I have limited time. Stanley Graves, the great Guyanese painter, told me this, and I think it's wonderfully true. He told me that Martin often said that all of Martin's poems, were fragments of the best poem that would never be written. I quote Stanley's words of truth extrapolated from Martin's thought. Quote, the ideal will ever remain seen but resting on the horizon, seen but unreachable, but no harm in trying. Many interesting things are there to be discovered on the way. And I believe Martin and Stanley Graves are right. I feel that about my own poems. fragments of the best poem that will never be written. It is an ever fascinating voyage of discovery which never reaches its destination. Those are Martin's mantras, some of them that I picked out. All of you have the document, so I'm hoping that you will be able to think about it and